I had reached the pinnacle of the educational world. I was a tenured full professor by the age of 40. I walked away from that life, which I loved, and an act that made most people think I'm insane. I'm certainly not going to rule that out, but I want to tell you my side of the story. After trying to change the morally bankrupt system in which we are immersed, I realized that the system was changing me, and not for the better. So I let go when I realized the first step that I could take towards destroying this irredeemably corrupt system is to leave it behind me. I hope you come to understand some of the disadvantages of industrial civilization. And if you do, I invite you to join me and the Slevas in letting go. The beginning of the story, in this case, is an important part. So I'll start a lot earlier than you'll appreciate, with my birth, in fact. But I won't go into the bloody details. Born into captivity and assimilated into the normalcy bias of a historically abnormal period in world history, I did all the things this culture expected from me. For example, I began my career in the expected manner. I was a classroom conservative. I even taught my dog to whistle. As you might expect, I received accolades and numerous awards for teaching and advising and for scholarship. Early on, I realized students don't care what you know until they know that you care about them. And I did, in ways that made my colleagues question whose side I was on, even while I was pointing out that in educating ourselves and others, we're all on the same side. As one indication of my love for teaching, these are the final lines of one of my books, which was published a few years before my departure. The rewards are supreme. You are allowed to live a life of leisure in the historical sense. You choose the work you do. Through the lives of your students, you experience life and death and the wonderful emotional roller coaster of youth. As such, you can choose to remain forever young, if only vicariously. You have opportunities to serve as a mentor, and if you're worthy and fortunate, somebody might endow you with that noblest of distinctions by calling you teacher. Even though I taught and I taught and I taught, my dog never did learn to whistle. And that showed me something important. Even earnest, caring teaching doesn't necessarily lead to learning. Those are two different things. The sage on the stage approach is dead. So too is the model of student as customer. So I switched to my approach to one based on a core of discovery in which every participant is expected to contribute to the learning of every other participant. We practice anarchism in our own classroom-centric way, taking responsibility for ourselves and for our neighbors. This radical approach to teaching puts it all on the line. Everything I know and everything I am is exposed during every meeting of every class. How can we evaluate our own knowledge, our wisdom, our own personal growth without exposing our assumptions at every turn? This, of course, requires us to let go. To let go of our hubris and replace it with humility. To let go of our egos and instead seek compassion and perhaps even empathy. As a further example of a radically liberal approach to teaching, a student in one of my classes 6 years ago this very semester recorded the vast array of topics we discussed during the first few minutes of one particular class meeting. By the 9th meeting of the semester, the students had figured out this isn't like anything I've ever done before. So a student in the first 3 minutes of class wrote down the things that didn't seem to be related to the topic. And so the first 3 minutes on a class dealing with conspicuous consumption, these topics were raised. Conspicuous consumption. The Princess Bride, greatest movie ever made. Pangea, the supercontinent. No Child Left Behind, the absurd act. I editorialize as I go along. Bear with me. Charlton Heston, the sort of actor. Sheryl Crow, the singer. John Dewey, the industrial philosophical educator. The New Jersey Turnpike. Socrates. Espresso Art, a local coffee shop in Tucson. And a culvert under Speedway Boulevard. We demonstrated, if only to ourselves, that conspicuous consumption underlying the American dream is connected to every aspect of our lives. And also that the dream has become a nightmare. Apparently my approach was too radical. That semester 6 years ago was the last time I was allowed to teach that class, which I had created from thin air upon request 10 years earlier. Shortly after this course was taken from me, the first administrative act of my new department head was to ban me from teaching in my entire department, after all my students were learning. Specifically, they were learning the question the dominant paradigm. In response, I was paid hush money to not interact with students. I was paid to stay away. We're all on the same side. We are the ones we've been looking for. And that means you too. But we must let go of a system that is making us sick, making us crazy, and killing us. During my entire life, success has been defined incorrectly by the amount of money a person has, rather than the amount of compassion. Similarly, the entire system has been defined in terms that make no sense, because the system rewards money over happiness and death over life. As John Ralston Saul pointed out in his 1992 book, Voltaire's Bastards, never has failure been so ardently defended as success. Fortunately, we're headed to a world where money doesn't matter. And without money, we'll all be rich in the life-sustaining ways that really matter. We spent the first couple million years of the human experience immersed in a gift economy, and it seems we'll be there again in the not-too-distant future. I long for the day we see more free-flowing rivers every year than the year before, as well as more clean air year after year, as well as more wild places and fewer species driven to extinction and less soil washed into the oceans of the world year after year. Currently, all those trends are going in the wrong direction. Like me, you were born into captivity, this zoo of a culture that we think is necessary for us to survive. I suspect most of you are only beginning to see the bars imprisoning you. The unseen bars of our prisons are keeping us from becoming fully human, from fully expressing our humanity. As Goethe said some 2 centuries ago, none are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. It's time for a jailbreak. Better yet, it's time to heed the words of Joan Baez and raise the prisons to the ground, even the invisible ones. Long before I was a classroom radical, I became an accidental social critic. And it really was an accident. I'll not go into the tawdry details here, but the incident didn't endear me to the university president or his administrative minions. They say the truth will set you free, but in this case it just managed to piss off a whole bunch of people. In the latter years of my 20-year stint at the University of Arizona, I was doing the best and most important work of my life. Excluded from teaching in my home department, I was teaching through a program called Poetry Inside Out. Inside included the men's pod, Pima County Jail, and the girls' pods of the Pima County Juvenile Detention Facility. Out included an alternative vocational high school and my honors course. The dean of the University Honors College was open to wacky ideas. He certainly must be here as well. Evidenced by me standing here. So I was able to teach a course on campus, and in this very special case, in several places off campus as well. We asked each honors student to pay a visit to the juvenile detention facility. In fact, it was required. You would be hard-pressed to come up with similar-age people in this country who had more disparate backgrounds than the upper-middle-class white honors students and the almost same-age Latinas who are in detention. The typical detainee is a 15-year-old Hispanic substance abuser who has been subjected to every kind of abuse, most recently sexual abuse by her mother's current boyfriend. She's been knifed and shot at. She's had a friend die in her arms. Nearly all of these events stem from factors largely beyond her control. After an honor student's first visit to detention, we would ask a single question when we came outside and sat on the bench outside the detention facility. We'd say, "What did you think?" The honor student would reflect for a minute, and the answer became unanimous. Was unanimous from the beginning. Dozens of honor students thought for a minute and they said, "They're just like me." Finally, my teaching was inclusive, and it led to real learning. Empathy is the most important thing we can learn. I like to think we were collectively and individually living this line from Eugene Debs. 5-time candidate for President of the United States on behalf of the Socialist Party. While there is a lower class, I am in it. While there is a criminal element, I am of it. While there is a soul in prison, I am not free. Debs knew that rights are not given, they are fought for. Like Thomas Jefferson, Debs knew our rights must be earned with frequent battles, or they will slip away. Like Jefferson, Debs knew people must be willing to die to secure their rights. One day I was having lunch with a retired colleague and I realized I was late for class in the county detention facilities. I scrambled to gather myself and put myself together. I said, I got to go, I'm teaching poetry in prison. And he says, is that what they're calling it now? Yeah, that's what they're calling it now. Well before this point, my scholarship had broadened to include the twin sides of the fossil fuel coin, global climate change, and peak oil. And my message increasingly targeted the public, paying my salary. Long as conservation biologist, I had become a friend of the earth, as well as a social critic. And I had come to recognize the costs and consequences of the industrial economy: obedience at home, oppression abroad, and wholesale destruction of the living planet on which we depend for our very lives. We're on track to cause our own extinction, probably within a few decades, because of ongoing climate change. The only legitimate hope to prevent our extinction, and that of the thousands of species we're taking with us into the abyss, is completion of the ongoing collapse of the industrial economy. The omnicidal culture we know as Western civilization and the industrial economy at its apex is about to reach its overdue end, although not nearly as quickly as I would wish. Time is not on our side. It's long past time to let go of a system that enslaves us all while destroying all life and therefore everything that matters. It's not merely time to let go, but to terminate this increasingly violent system that values the property of the rich more than the lives of the poor. As Arundhati Roy wrote in her 2001 book, Power Politics, the trouble is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you've seen it, keeping quiet, saying nothing, becomes as political an act as speaking out. There's no innocence. Either way, you're accountable. I saw it, and I recognized my accountability. Even though I was doing exceptional work, by my own standard, and doing it well, not by the standards of university administrators, I was participating in an immoral system. For me, it was time to let go because I could no longer participate in the system and look at the face in the mirror. I could no longer expose the dark underbelly of civilization and live at the apex of empire. By this time, I'd come to recognize that my generation's legacy, the curse my generation leaves yours, is a world depleted of resources, ruined by empire, and ruled by fascism masquerading as a republic. You're welcome for that. A few years ago, I put my own spin on Arundhati Roy's conclusion. Big energy poisons our water. Big ag controls our seeds, hence our food. Big farm controls through pharmaceuticals the behavior of our children. Wall Street controls the flow of money. Big ag controls the messages you receive every day. The criminally rich get richer through crime. That's how America works. Through it all, we believe we're free. Like most contemporary Americans, I believed I was free for far too long. But in fact, I was bound by the monkey trap. Monkey trap is a little cage, only this big, attached with a chain or a cable to a durable object. And the monkey trap has a piece of fruit in it and a little hole, just big enough that a monkey can put its hand in through the hole. But then when it grabs a hold of the fruit, it can't pull its hand back out. And the monkey won't let go. So you just build this little tiny trap and you can catch a monkey. I wouldn't let go for the longest time of the low-hanging fruit of American empire. But eventually, I let go. I left the easy life at the university for four primary reasons. First and foremost, there's a moral imperative to the way we conduct our lives. And living at the apex of empire didn't match that moral imperative for me. Secondly, I left as an act of resistance, consistent with the baby boom generation of which I was a part, consistent with the notion of resistance that bubbled up in the American Cultural Revolution of the 1960s and 70s, until we threw it all away for a few dollars more in 1980. Third, Letting go allows me to spend more time to speak and write than I was able when I spent much of my time fending off administrative dragons. And fourth, and least importantly, there is potential to add a few years to my life. An idea that is looking shaky at best, and it's not particularly relevant in the bigger picture. It's Nietzsche who said, "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger." And for me, in this case, it's a race. This might just kill me. Well, it's hard work that I haven't participated in. I was chasing electrons around the screen. I miss many aspects of my former life. I miss daily interactions with my wife and best friend of the last 3 decades, who stayed on a more conventional path. Similarly, I miss frequent interactions with inmates and honor students. I miss fingers that actually open and close on command. It's all about the hand strength when you're in a homestead. And it hurts. Working hurts. I can't even open and close my finger. This is no problem when I was just clacking away at the keyboard and chasing those electrons hurting around on the screen. That's easy. Pick and shovel? That's work. I miss the easy life of civilization, even knowing what it does to the living planet. The aching in my heart is profound, but it pales in comparison to the heartache I feel when I think about civilization and what it does. Industrial civilization forces us to extend human population overshoot on an overcrowded planet to the tune of adding more than 200,000 people every day, first minus deaths. Industrial civilization forces us to overheat our already overheated home, setting records every year for greenhouse gas emissions. 6% more last year than the year before. 6% more the year before, the year before that. We keep ratcheting it up long after we've understood the consequences. We understood the consequences in April of 1896, when Svante Arrhenius published a paper on the topic. It pointed out exactly where we were headed. Industrial civilization forces us to ratchet up the 6th grade extinction as we drive more than 200 species to extinction each and every life-destroying day. And now, with full knowledge that extinction is forever, we are driving our own species to extinction. No matter how badly I miss my former life, I can never go back. And not just because I'd never be hired into a civilized job because of the whole insanity thing. It's within my head, too. So now I share a small property with a small family of humans, as well as goats, ducks, chickens, and gardens. Living in agrarian anarchy, I've taken responsibility for myself and for my neighbors, human and otherwise. Like a Cheyenne dog soldier, I placed my picket pin in a small valley at the edge of empire. I will protect this valley, even with my life, from further insults of industry, including the dam proposed near my new home. The problem with being a martyr, you have to die for the cause. Finally, very late in an unexamined life, I came to see the horrors of the way we live and the way I live. And I let go, and invite you to join me. As I developed this presentation starting just 3 or 4 days ago, I thought I would end right there, but then as I was driving here today, I realized that my invitation is too weak and too passive. You hear that invitation, and it's like an invitation to high school graduation of third cousin once removed in Omaha. And you just throw that away. So I don't want you to throw this away. I don't want you to just toss aside this invitation. So I'd like to raise the stakes by pointing out yet again the dire straits in which we find ourselves and the attendant necessity to take action. Taking action will almost certainly bring you personal hardship. Acting against the industrial economy brands you a terrorist. It might lead to incarceration and torture, and perhaps even early death. A phrase from activist writer Derek Jensen comes to mind. We have the best excuse in the world to not act. So we can have the best excuse in the world, or we can have a world. The stakes are that high at this point. With that trade-off in mind, we need witnesses and we need warriors on behalf of the living planet. So I'd like to extend another invitation. Don't just join me in walking away. Join me as a witness and as a warrior on behalf of life. Ultimately, in other words, on your own behalf. Thank you.